I'm Tolde Stefanos, and this is ERISAT's The Power of One program. Today is May 8, 2024. A UNESCO-sponsored World Press Freedom Day conference dedicated to journalism and freedom of expression was held in Santiago, Chile from May 2nd to the 4th. Journalists and freedom of expression advocates from around the world delivered their presentations, including Nobel Prize winner Maria Ressa, who co-founded Rappler, a digital media outlet in the Philippines. Our own Dr. Saba Tesfayohannes was also there representing ERISAT. As part of her presentation, Dr. Saba recognized the pioneering independent Eritrean newspapers that operated briefly but courageously until they were shut down in September 2001. She also named the jailed founders and journalists whose whereabouts is still unknown almost 23 years later. Welcome, Dr. Saba, and thank you for being here. This was a good opportunity for ERISAT to make the case for Eritrea's pioneering independent media and their courageous journalists, as you highlighted in your presentation. First, a curiosity question. The background picture shows chapter 6 of a book by the poet journalist with your name on it. So what book is this referring to, and what is in chapter 6 that's highlighted on the background picture?
That is, this is a very nice catch, Tolde. I did not even notice it until he just brought it to my attention. I think the title should be the title of our presentation, the panel we were in. Remember, there was an attorney, there was judges from Brazil and Thailand, and there was also an environmentalist environmental reporter from Guatemala, and myself. So I think this was displayed as the speakers were going on the stage. So I did not even notice whatever was in there. So I think the title is probably what we were speaking about, because our panel was for telling the stories from around the world, people in the field of journalism or in the area working in that area. But I think now you brought it to my attention. The poet journalist, I'm not a poet, but I would like to be one. So there is another Eritrean poet by the same name, no relation. Mm-hmm. She goes by Saba Kidani. As you know, back home, you go by your father's first name. I think Kidani is for her father's first name, which she kept it that way, my understanding. And then, but my last name, before my married last name, is Kidani. So because I am Saba Tesfayohannes Kidani, so I go by Saba Kidani here in the US. But so I think they might have confused that and then put it, even though they had all my bio and information. I think that's this is not the first time actually this happening. They always mistaken both myself and the other Saba Kidani, the poet. Yeah.
Well, this is a good opportunity to look for the poet Saba Kidani to bring on this program. So we'll keep that as an open invitation.
Oh, absolutely. She knows that. She's been always invited to come on ERISAT. I think she's been on ERISAT a couple of times, but yeah, here is I think the open invitation on your program as well. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So moving on, what were the criteria ERISAT and the others had to meet to be part of this UN-sponsored World Conference?
Well, ERISAT is also a pioneer Exiled media organization that was founded, as you know, in 2018. And then ERISAT has been working in the field of journalism to inform, empower, and inspire the Eritrean public, and kind of be a voice of fact-based journalism to the Eritreans who are denied of that for the last 30 plus years, since the Eritrea actually apparently got independence in the early 1990s. And then those brief periods you mentioned of the independent media space that was shut down within a couple of years of period. So ERISAT has been in that space of providing information to the Eritrean public inside and outside of the country. So, and then because of that, we were known by some international organizations who are supporting and helping independent media like ERISAT. So that's how the invitation actually first came in, to be part of a panel to speak about exiled media. And that actually got the attention of UNESCO that is organizing this conference. They said, wait a minute, so we want ERISAT to be part of the main plenary session, and that's what I got the opportunity to be able to represent ERISAT. I actually feel that I was representing the entire nation, because this is an opportunity for any Eritrean to be able to highlight the oppression and the censorship and the media blackout that exists in Eritrea.
No, I really like the fact that he highlighted the independent media and the names of each of the journalists who have been imprisoned. So good. Who else was there from Africa?
Oh, I cannot claim. I tried to get hold of everybody, not only in Africa, as many people I should connect to, because this is to our advantage. Actually, this is the opportunity that, for you to get connected to different organizations or media organization or international organization, as well as small exile medias like ours, right? So from the ones I was able to connect personally, I met journalists, people working in the area of journalism from Namibia, South Africa, Somalia, Kenya. So it was really incredible. And of course, people from England, Ukraine, not Ukraine, Estonia, and different parts of the world, that the Nicaragua, Guatemala, I mean, it's just Mexico, Ecuador. It's just quite an experience to be able to connect. But so the Africans that I was able to connect with were actually the greater East Africa, including Kenya, and the whole of Africa, like Somalia, I told you. And it was quite an interesting experience, and worth a while to be able to be there and connect with people who are doing a lot of very risky and incredible work in the area of journalism.
One of the panelists after your presentation was the Namibian Minister of Technology and Communications. I think the host mentioned she became a minister at age 23. Pretty impressive, especially compared to the average age of Eritrea's ministers being in their 70s and what appears to be an empty pipeline. Did you get a chance to meet her?
I actually missed her, but I was trying to get hold of her, but I did not personally get a chance to greet her. But I was able to connect, like I told you, with a Namibian founder of the Namibian newspaper, which is very critical media outlet or a newspaper in the country, that she was actually challenging her, being an independent media. So you can see that interaction, that kind of, when she was presenting, her country woman was challenging her as part of an independent media. That's quite wonderful, and that's the kind of things that I wish to see in Eritrea, and for us to be able to be at that stage where we can challenge our officials and politicians and the things that they are doing not right. So it's quite an experience. But unfortunately, I did not get a chance to say hello to her. But hopefully, pretty soon we have that connection.
So just to be clear, the Namibian journalist you mentioned is not an exile journalist. She operates from inside Namibia?
Yeah, she lives and operates from inside Namibia. So it's again, that's also an interesting perspective that I think we kind of resonates with us quite deeply. That so, for example, there were Nicaraguan exile journalists. Actually, he was the founder of this was kind of multimedia channel. It was television, radio, and online, and as well as newspaper, Confidential. I think that's what they call it. So now they are in exile for the last 10 years. And he was telling me that now their presence is only in social media space, because their TV station is shut down and the radio station is shut down. So they were forced out of the country. Actually, they don't, when the government started shutting down, they actually kind of evacuated to safety, right?
Yeah.
Unlike our unfortunate brothers who were disappeared or taken away with no rule of law, and then they, we don't know whether they are still alive or dead. So I think that history, even though they are exiled media, when they heard me speak about the way things happened in Eritrea, they cannot even understand. So, well, wait a minute. So we were complaining about this, and now we hear this. So that there was this a lot of empathy, and they gravitated kind of to learn more about Eritrea and to be of in any way, of shape or form, to connect and be help to what we're doing. So they were very, very touched by what's happening in Eritrea.
Yeah, so it's an interesting observation because the Namibian minister was in Chile and the journalist was in Chile. She challenged her in a world platform, and they're both going back home together. So maybe one day for Eritrea too. Just staying on the topic of Namibia, I think your PhD dissertation was partially about Namibia. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, actually, that's what I also told Gwen, the founder of the Namibian newspaper I told you about. So, hey, wait a minute. I was actually kind of, as I get ready for this conference, I was reading about the history of this, the World Press Freedom Day, what it is about, how it started. Actually, she was one of those few people who had the vision to see this happening every year with quite a number of people involved in that. And then she's seeing this after 30 years because the first World Press Freedom Day, which they call it the Windhoek Declaration, happened in 1993 in Namibia, in the capital of Namibia. So she was one of them. So I was telling her, listen, I actually have a keen interest in Namibia. I did my PhD dissertation on comparing the post-conflict experiences of Eritrea and Namibia. If you ask why, because they kind of, both countries came to statehood at similar time, Namibia 89, Eritrea 91, and then you cannot have taken any diverge route in terms of post-independence experiences, where the Namibia, your country chose the democratic route, and our country chose absolutely one of a kind sort of dictatorship. And she said, well, she was really interested. And then so I was telling her, actually, I wanted to come to Namibia to do my research, but your countrymen did not make it easy for me to travel there and whatever. I was just like, oh, they should do it. If you want to come, let me know. Anyway, so it's it's kind of, I wanted to understand why, going back to my dissertation, why even though it seems like they both went to about 30 years of struggle to gain statehood, and they were able to attain it, of course, a different way. Eritrea through armed struggle, Namibia through more diplomatic and international pressure, and it has through a close connection with the democratization of South Africa as well, because it's a very linked situation there, because South Africa also kind of colonized or dominated, administered Namibia in the past. So that those similarities, and Ethiopia did the same to Eritrea. So that kind of similarity kind of took my attention to focus on that. And most importantly, the divergent route in terms of democratization in the experiences of post-conflict nation building was the one that I really want to understand. Why Eritrea kind of went to that direction and Namibia went to the other direction. And does it have anything to do with our history of gaining independence through the armed struggle? And if that has kind of created this sort of, wait a minute, we can do it. We can do this, we can do it. We don't need anybody to tell us whatever, right? Kind of that, if we can explain those kind of trajectories of historical outcomes could be dictated by the way independence itself came about. So that's what my dissertation was trying to understand and kind of explain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So back to the conference. The conference was attended by about 2,400 people, and you were one of the few presenters. What was the mix of the presenters? I think you kind of touched on some of them earlier. How many are operating from inside their home countries in spite of maybe some difficulties and harassments? And how many are forced to operate from exile like ERISAT? Did you get a sense of the mix of the presenters there?
It's just like you said, it's just like even to describe to be in the midst of over 2,400 people there, even to get in was like about 2 blocks of queue, like a line to get in to be checked in. So fortunately, since I was one of the panelists, I was able to kind of sneak in without staying in line. But it was just quite because you have to be in line for a long time to be able to make it. You might not even make it. Like so, the people we left people like lined up there who probably had to wait for an hour at least to be able to get in. So it's kind of you can see how well attended and a great number of people from around the world. To your question about how many from exile, operating from exile, how many from their home, of course, the majority, the overwhelming majority of journalists are operating from their home country. Of course, they have harassment, they have this space kind of closing in, kind of making it difficult because democracy is in the decline. Not only, I mean, Eritrea stuff, it's kind of out of question. Even in the US, we're talking about the decline of democracy and the worrying signs of that. Also, the press being harassed different ways, kind of pushed around. But maybe a handful. I cannot. I don't know how many exile medias, but the handful of them, like I told you, like even Somalia, the Somalian journalist that was there, he's operating from home. You know, he's not in exile, right? Uh, so it tells you we're very few of us. You know, like I told you, I met the Nicaraguan journalist who's a founder of the independent media, who's not in exile for the last 10 years. So they and ourselves, like ERISAT or Eritreans. So it's a very for a handful, if because there might be some that I haven't met, but very handful of them that are operating outside of their countries because they are pushed out of because the limited political space or the limited media freedom that they are having in their own country. So it's very few compared to the overwhelming majority of journalists that are operating, some of them freely, some of them with some sort of limitations or harassment and pushbacks by people in power. And I think it's fascinating to see also. I don't know if something that kind of touched me very deeply is that in that opening day on the 3rd of May, uh, the former president of Chile, Michela Blanchet, and the current president, President Gabriel, they were both in the same room. They both delivered a speech. And while this was happening, it was just very fascinating and inspiring to the extent for me, like I was envisioning, you know, maybe pretty soon Eritrea will be hosting this World Press Freedom Day. You know, it might not be that far off. You know, so you just what kind of made me think about those kind of hopeful thinkings was that seeing two former and current president in the same room, and while the president, the current president, the sitting president was delivering a speech, a protester showed up with a banner calling for justice for one of his colleagues, a journalist who was killed 3 years ago. I think there was a protest and she was killed in that confrontation, whatever have you. So her case has been, I think, pending in the court. So he was protesting. It was in Spanish. So I didn't understand what was happening. But I was just saying, wait a minute, what's happening here? But fascinating to see. So he interrupted the president to make his point. The president waited to listen to him. He finished, and then the president was trying to. So what he was saying later on, as was translated to us, was like, wait a minute, a justice delayed is a justice denied. She deserves justice, and that's what he was, chanting. And so the president's response was, "You're right. I agree with you, but I am not the court. The court is independent. So I call like you, I want them to do this thing and finish it as soon as possible so that justice will be served. But it's not in my hands. I don't make a decision. The courts are independent. But I'll be happy to listen to you, to speak with you, and to have a meeting with you. It's like the way he handled it. And so finally, the guy kind of collected his banner and left.
Mm.
No security guys jumping on the guy, no drama. It's just like, this is like literally press freedom in action. Like the entire world, this was live feeding. Everybody was watching it around the world. So for me to see that, and this is a country, Chile is a country that has experienced the worst of dictatorship with Pinochet. And so now we are at this stage where the sitting and the former president sitting in the same room, delivering a speech about the freedom of press around the world. And then someone from there, one person, actually, who was interrupting the president when the president, he waited for him to finish. The protester was interrupting the president. President was not offended by that. It was just giving him a chance to, respond. So for me, this scene was quite uplifting, quite inspiring, and that kind of made me hope and then kind of see the future of Eritrea, at least for our children, where this will be our reality as well. There is hope. If they can go through Pinochet, and then maybe we will also go through our own Pinochet, and then get to a point where we all are aspiring to get to a point of democratic and constitutional Eritrea. So it was very inspiring for me.
Yeah, well, we just said we just need to do what Chile did. If you follow the steps that Chile followed to get here, why not? It can work in Eritrea too. Another point of observation is you mentioned Somalia. I think in Eritrean circles, you always say we don't want to be like Somalia, a broken country and all that. And here it is, a journalist who operates from Somalia. Participating in the venue while there was nobody from Eritrea, representing Eritrea, go with the freedom to go back to Eritrea after having participated in something like this. So anyway, those are the two points of observation, the Somalia one and the from Pinochet to where Chile is now. Good examples that there is hope. Yeah, there is hope.
There is hope. You're right.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. There is hope.
Yeah,
there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
What were the key learnings you took away from the conference? Well, I guess the last point he made is a good one, from Pinochet to here. Anything else that pops up to mind?
That we have a lot more to do. That we say that Eritrea is a black hole. Eritrea is where no information comes out, whatever. But what are we doing though, right? So the ones who are outside of Eritrea, who could speak up, who could tell the story, who could make a case about what's happening inside Eritrea, what are we doing, right? So I realized we're not doing absolutely. I cannot even dare to say enough. We haven't even started it. So I think there's a lot more work from us who are in exile, outside, abroad, who need to inform and educate people. Let me tell you, after my presentation, almost everybody wants, some of them heard about Eritrea, but they did not understand the extent of what's happening in Eritrea, right? So it's kind of, literally, it's a dark area for most people in every form, not only in the press freedom, but in every area that they don't know anything about Eritrea, right? So one teacher who happens to be educated there, he said, you know what? Thank you for educating me about Eritrea. I actually assigned my students to do research on Eritrea now, thanks to you. Just like, yeah, wonderful. So it's that the things that we need to do. It could be in whatever field, whatever area that we might be in. Telling the story goes a long way, right? So educating one person, telling what we know of Eritrea to one other person, I think goes a long way, because it's what I saw, the level of not knowing about what the hell is happening in Eritrea. I have no one else but to blame myself, and that kind of to commit myself to be able to do more, to write more, talk about more, to say more about Eritrea. So I think that we are unknown, you know, and I think we have to do something to change that narrative. Like we have to, you would want in the space where there was people who care deeply about press freedom or who work in that area, for them not to know about Eritrea, to me, it was unacceptable. That's something that I said, this is unacceptable, right? So we have to make it a point whenever this thing happens every year that everybody has to know about Eritrea. They have to learn and listen about what's happening in Eritrea. So that commitment, that sort of to-do list with or um, what is expected of me or people like you and me and others is kind of that's an assignment that I brought with me, and then I wanted to share with everybody for us that there's a lot of work to do about educating people about what's happening in Eritrea.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the problems also is, you know, we don't communicate in English that much. We wait for foreigners to tell our stories if it has to be done outside of the Eritrean languages. And I should have said it at the beginning of the conversation. The reason why we are doing this in English is ERISAT wants to create an English program, so the audience can be, you know, expanded to diaspora Eritreans who may not speak the language, the Eritrean languages very well, and also to the outside community, like you were saying, you know, that nobody knows, hardly anybody knows about Eritrea. And it's our responsibility to tell our stories in as many languages as possible, and English being, you know, a global language. ERISAT is trying to create an English program. And this is an invitation to all of you out there, young people interested in journalism, who can take responsibility for maintaining an English program. It's an open invitation. Talk to Dr. Saba, talk to me, send information to info@erisat.org if you are interested. And we need to tell our stories ourselves, not through other people who may not be telling it as frequently as it needs to be, but if we're doing it ourselves, we can tell it as frequently as it needs to be. So maybe the gaps that you mentioned can be filled over time. So if you want to add to anything to that, you're welcome. But I think English programming is one of the key things ERISAT is trying, should do.
And I think just to emphasize what you are saying, that, you know, I think it's important that people want to hear from the people, the owners of that story, right? So it's kind of like you say, we shouldn't wait for a second, a third, a fourth layer of storytelling. I should tell it, you should tell it, the others should tell it too, because it will be more powerful, more impactful that way, right? So, and then that way people also will be interested in learning more, in learning like this educator. I mean, not just like out of the blue, he was just so fascinated, interested, kind of deeply impacted by the stories of our disappeared journalists, and that he wanna not only himself, but he also wants his students to learn about it, about Eritrea and what's happening in Eritrea. So I think that the storytelling aspect of it is very important, and ERISAT as a media organization is also doing a storytelling. That's we're telling a story. So that story should be told by as many of us possible, right? So it's not only a few, it's as many different, complicated, hard, sad, happy, success, failures. All these stories need to come to the front and to bring us to create that common narrative of triumphs, right? So these different struggles and triumphs kind of add up to make our stories, would might lead us to what we want to see in the future in Eritrea. So I think it's very important. And I think people, young people especially, who want to help us tell that story, who wants to highlight that story, absolutely. And I also second your call for them to come and be part of this storytelling that ERISAT wants to accomplish.
So just to conclude, with so many people from all corners of the world sharing their ideas in such a short time. It may have felt like drinking from a fire hose. Any parting thoughts on what that was like and other things you would like to add before we close?
The collaboration. I think for me, that the sort of connections that ERISAT was able to make with different individuals, with different organizations, people who are doing media work in a difficult condition and limited condition and extreme condition. So that for me is the greatest gift that this conference has provided for me personally and for the organization in general, for us to be able to connect with our colleagues around the world who are doing similar things that we are attempting to do, right? And then also to see them being ready, hey, anything that we can do to help, in any way, shape or form, that readiness, that openness, and that space that, I think I was able to see and to create, for me, was a great opportunity for ERISAT also, as it takes the next step in engaging our people in the work of media. And because I think we're not gonna raise arms and fight like Eritreans have done to gain their independence. Now the fight is for freedom, equality, and democratic and constitutional governance in Eritrea, and we can do that only with an independent and strong media like that of ERISAT. So that's what we are trying to build here at ERISAT. So I think to be able to connect it with people who are doing that sort of strong media work, and I think that's a plus and a privilege, and hopefully this also opens more opportunities for potential funders that want to see ERISAT do the mission that it's set out to do.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So that's the power of networking, and it's great that you got an opportunity to do that. I think the independent media, like you said, the future of Eritrea will be much brighter when there are 5, 10 independent media organizations to replace the Ministry of Information. In fact, the future of Eritrea that does not have the Ministry of Information would be ideal. So the role can be taken by independent media. So thank you, Dr. Saba. Great to see ERISAT represented in World Press Freedom Day, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Tolda, for having me.